No, that's not the humidity left over from yesterday's rain. Love is in the air here on Valentine's Day, and romance at work is no exception. The Society for Human Resource Management reveals that more than half of U.S. workers have been in or currently are involved in at least one workplace relationship.
All right, well, but is it for love or job ambition? The new findings reveal what motivates these workplace relationships. So the Vice President of Thought Leadership at SHRM, Dr. James Atkinson, joins us live here to discuss those findings this morning. Good morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, so very timely here. Some of the stats here: 62% of men say that they've been at least one workplace relationship. That is compared to 45% of women. What do you make of that, depending on gender here?
Well, again, that's just what the data is showing us, and that there are more men that have shown that they're comfortable having that relationship versus women. But it is pretty common. Again, 1 in 6 people have been on a date with a colleague in the last year. So it is something that's quite common across the workplace for both genders.
Dr. Atkinson, we gotta ask, because people think love in the workplace. Is it, a chance to climb up the ladder at work, or is it for true love? What do you find in this study?
Well, again, happy to report that the top reason that people are joining or starting these workplace relationships is for love. More than half tell us they're looking for things like companionship or even sincere love. But to your question, about 1 in 4 tell us that they are starting these relationships for more job-related motivations. So that might be things like security or even job advancement. So much like outside of the workplace, a lot of reasons for these types of relationships.
And people always wonder about motivations with these things, right? Because in the past, Dr. Atkinson, it's been kind of viewed as taboo, right? Mixing business and pleasure. So what are we finding now? Do we think that the views are shifting a little bit to where it's more acceptable, or people don't frown upon these relationships as much?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting to see what organizations are doing, because we looked at more than 2,000 HR professionals and said, well, what does this look like at your organization? And only about 1 in 20 have outright restrictions or very restrictive policies against workplace relationships. But so that means that almost all of us work in places where it is allowed in some way, shape, or form. But a lot of times there are some types of caveats or restrictions there. So maybe you're not allowed to date someone who is a manager or a direct report of yours, or maybe you can't date someone who is in the same department. And so while it is actually allowed across the board, there are some of those restrictions in place.
Happy to say none of those restrictions were in place, because that's how I found my fiance.
She was my old coworker. We can't tiptoe about this one.
Yeah, my fiance Jordan and I were
Yes.
coworkers, so found love in the workplace, and it worked out. What other things from the study did you find that were a little bit eye-popping?
Well, I think one of the things that, people assume that maybe this isn't a good thing or that it has a negative effect. But we actually asked our managers, what has been the effect on your team dynamics of having these workplace relationships on your team? And actually 2 in 3 managers said it's actually had a positive impact on their teams. And I think that really comes down to places where organizations are really prepared. They are clearly communicating what those policies are, and employees kind of know what they are and know what's allowed or not allowed. So it comes down to a lot of preparation to see how these things play out in the end.
Yeah, that's fair. And, it could lend itself to a positive work culture, right? If you have positive feelings with your coworkers, if you are allowed to, date in the same department. But there was a statistic that you guys brought up about PDA in the workplace, and some of it can borderline on inappropriate. What did your research find?
Yeah, so again, we asked people about those public displays of affection and, one, whether or not that they had engaged in them. About 1 in 5 said they had engaged in those at work. And nearly half said that they actually considered those types of affection inappropriate. So again, in this instance, I think it really comes down to you as an employee, how you're respecting those around you. And if you know that these types of things are not going to be comfortable, with those in your team or in your department, it's probably best to avoid those public displays.
Dr. Atkinson, we're almost out of time, but I feel like everything we found from the study was just be a good adult about it, right? Find somebody for the right reasons, respect your coworkers, and then everything is going to be okay, right?
Yes, I think that is a good way to think about it. Just be a good adult about it.
Again,
appreciate your insight, Dr. Atkinson. Thank you so much for being here on this Valentine's Day, and some good things for all of us to remember to be good, considerate coworkers, right?
100%.